There have been a ton of Scream 7 updates just in the last couple of months. Today, let's do one big recap on all of them.
I've been through this a lot.
Yes, you have, Sydney. That brings up a big question for today's update video. We've just learned about a new cast member for Scream 7 that will be playing Sydney's daughter. The question now is, will she be playing the new lead in Scream 7, or will that be reserved for the original final girl? Let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. The torch may be passed again since we've just learned that Isabel May from the Yellowstone spin-off series 1883 and 1923 has joined the cast of Scream 7, specifically playing the role of Sydney's daughter. Immediately, you might have some questions about this, like, wasn't that character a baby in Scream 5, which only happened like 2 years ago? Personally, I think Sydney just has a big family, and that could be Isabel May's younger sibling. Or maybe she just ages like Jason Voorhees in between movies. I don't know. Other confirmed members of the cast currently include Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox. Roger L. Jackson soft confirmed his voice in a recent interview, and of course he's coming back to voice Ghostface. They're not gonna do what Spiral did and try to change up an iconic horror voice.
Hello, Detective Boswick. I want to play a game.
Patrick Dempsey has also hinted at a return to the franchise recently after his Scream 3 character was revealed to be married to Sidney Prescott in that same stroller scene in Scream 2022. We know he has a couple of kids considering today's update. Jesus Christ, Mark, you couldn't pull out of a driveway. I have to note that this news was first reported by Daniel Richtman, who also says that Cashin Bilton from Foundation will play Sydney's daughter's boyfriend. He kind of looks like a more Hollywood version of Zach Morris. And listen, I hate to judge a book by its cover, but this guy looks like he enjoys killing people. I'm calling it now, it's the boyfriend again, or an excellent red herring. Dude better not own any blue flannels. He also starred in Foundation alongside Lee Pace, who you might remember from another murder mystery, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. That's an intense little A24 film that has a better gut punch ending than most Scream sequels. Sorry, not sorry. No word yet on if the Meeks Martin twins are returning for Scream 7 either. Even though half of the core 4 will certainly be absent from this new entry, I could see Mason Gooding showing up considering he leads the new Spyglass slasher Heart Eyes coming out next February. It would be really cool to at least get a cameo from one of them to know that the power of the core 4 is still alive and well. Core 4! It's easy to look at these new cast members and say, who the f are these people? Like I did, but Scream is known for giving chances to up-and-comers. Before Melissa Barrera joined the cast of Scream 5, her biggest credits were TV shows and In the Heights, the other Lin-Manuel Miranda musical. Now she's a prominent star in the world of horror, leading movies like Bed Rest, Abigail, and Your Monster. Same goes for most of the core 4, except for Jenna Ortega, who was obviously a huge star before all of this, and an even bigger star since that Wednesday dance went viral. Why do I spend countless hours of my time reviewing horror movies here when I could just be dancing on TikTok? I ask myself this question every morning. It's real easy to rip on Scream 7 right now, considering some of the bonehead dumb decisions that the production company has made in the last year or so, but I have to admit, these are some pretty good picks. I'm already suspicious of the boyfriend, and Isabel here looks like a young Neve Campbell. These are some solid casting decisions so far, and I can't wait to learn who else has joined the next Ghostface massacre. That leaves us with one big question: will Isabel May lead Scream 7 or not? What I mean by that is, will they set up Scream 7 the same way they did Scream 5, where the focus is split between new and old characters? I know a lot of us feel like we're sick of seeing Sydney as the focus, whether it's because we liked shifting the spotlight in the previous 2 films, or that the series is just beating a dead horse at this point. Trust me, I'm with you there. I really think we need to just commit to what's already on the page though. With Sydney being confirmed to return earlier this year, I just think the most successful route for 7 would be to focus solely on her again. It could make Scream 7 feel like Scream 4 in the sense that it's still a Sydney story, but we focus on a whole new side of her family. Hopefully none of them become our Ghostface this time, because that's been done to death, but I just don't see the point in having Sydney there if she's just gonna give her daughter advice on dealing with a new killer. That is basically the same thing as Scream 5 all over again, and we just got that movie 2 years ago. This franchise is frustrating. Look, take the potential L on maybe copy and pasting a story from a previous Wes Craven Scream, and then try to focus on making your new Ghostface killer something really special, something really different from the previous 6 flicks. And actually this time, Scream 6. That is the very very best route for this franchise at this point in time. If they make Isabel May the focus, which trust me, I want something fresh from this franchise so bad, you guys know that, I think it's just going to turn into Scream 5 again. If we're going to repeat stuff from the past, which seems inevitable at this point, you might as well go for the much stronger story elements of Scream 4. The more I watch these movies, the less I like the way the fifth film is set up. It doesn't spend enough time in the first half building up its characters so it can reintroduce previous beloved cast members. Thankfully, the character development for the core four would be front and center in Scream 6, a far superior film in my opinion. Scream 6 might have done very little for the legacy characters, but thankfully it focused on the new survivors, building them up to be worthy components of this franchise. There's still a problem there though, however, because a lot of the older fans were questioning why the hell are Gale and Kirby even in this film? I guess they pushed the plot a bit and we do have that chase scene with Gale that's awesome, but the film would have been way more consistent in my opinion had they just let go of the past entirely. With that being said, however, Scream 7 has chosen the nostalgia lane and it has to stick to it to be successful. If the majority of Scream 6 chose to tell a new story in this universe, Scream 7 has decided to go back and focus on the franchise's original final girl again. Make it about Sidney and don't waver the focus, or else it's going to feel messy and confused. It's the same issue presented in Scream 6 where they decided to rest on their laurels in the third act and do a typical reveal, when the rest of the movie feels way too experimental for that kind of ending. Scream 7 needs to commit to telling a fresh story with its past lead and not split airtime with a daughter character. To put it more simply, we should do a Jill and Sidney relationship in Scream 7 between daughter and mother, except in Act 3 we don't see the former there taking off the mask. That could work for me, but we'll just have to see on February 27th of 2026. They still have a year and some change to figure this one out.
You got a problem here, guy?
That ghosty looking fella sure does have a problem. Today's upload, however, mostly concerned who's under that mask. We have had a ton of new Scream 7 cast members who I want to theorize a little bit on today, talking a little bit if they will live, die, or maybe be our next Ghostface. Well, let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Within the last month or so, we have had a bunch of new casting announcements for the upcoming Scream 7 that will likely start production next year. If you guys have seen any of the most recent Scream 7 uploads on this page, you guys know I have a lot more doubts about this upcoming entry versus the last two, but today I'm gonna try to be a little more positive about this one. Because yes, admittedly, there are a lot of cons about this upcoming Scream film, there is an opportunity here to do something special with the mystery. The writers here may be repeating the same formula from Screams 4 and 5, but those films had some pretty big shocks in Act 3. An interesting coincidence there is that both of those movies have a female killer that I personally was not expecting the entire time. And then the male counterpart I thought was obvious. I saw them coming from a mile away. I see why a lot of people say Screams 4 and 5 are so similar. I also want to talk about the rumored character descriptions in today's video about our new lead cast of young people. Some of these descriptions are quite revealing. So let's lift up our magnifying glasses, put on our detective caps, and start looking at this entire cast. Who lives? Who dies? And who will be unmasked as our Ghostface killer in Act 3? Let's get our legacy characters out of the way, first talking about Sidney Prescott. Neve Campbell was announced to return to the franchise after sitting the last one out in March of 2024 via a cool Instagram post where she gave us a little shot of the cover page of the new script. She of course sat out Scream 6 over a pay dispute with the studio, but that seems to be resolved. They probably drove the money truck up to her house for this one. Now that she's returning for the 7th entry, she'll likely play a role similar to her part in Scream 5. This film is seemingly putting a focus on her daughter, who will likely be Ghostface's new target. Hopefully Sidney has more to do here rather than Scream 5 where she was just kind of third act backup. I would just like to see her be more involved with the story, more than just shooting doors at Stu's house and consoling our sad friends. Speaking of sad characters, Courtney Cox is back as Gale Weathers as well in entry number 7. Gale is the only character to appear in all of the Scream films so far, unless you count Roger Jackson, who of course just does the voice of Ghostface. But unlike Sidney Prescott, I don't think this character is untouchable. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Gale bit the dust in this one. They clearly had nothing to do with Gale's character in Scream 6 after Dewey's death, which makes me think she could sacrifice herself in this new movie for Sidney's kids. I think the only reason Gale did not die in Scream 6 was because Sidney could not be in that film due to that pay dispute we were just talking about. Think about it, after Dewey's death in Scream 5, she was there like at a moment's notice, like a couple hours later she was in Woodsboro. The same thing would have happened in Scream 6 had Gale died. They had to keep her alive, otherwise that would have been a massive plot hole. And a lot of you would argue that Scream 6 already has plenty of those. I think they're going to finish up Gale's arc here by reintroducing the character by by saying she finally wrote that book about Dewey, the lovely sheriff of Woodsboro. And then she'll probably die towards the third act, sacrificing herself like I just said. She can finally be reunited with Dewey. A little tear. It's tough to call Patrick Dempsey's Mark Kincaid a legacy character, but technically, yes, he has appeared in one previous film prior to this, and that's Scream 3, baby. The black sheep of this lovely franchise. Rumor has it Patrick Dempsey has signed on after a minor pay dispute. It sounds like he wanted a little more money than what he was getting, and that makes sense considering the taboo nature of this specific entry. Although Mark was a bit of a red herring in Scream 3, we've learned a lot about him since. He's been married to Sydney for some time now and has multiple kids with her. Now listen, unless this guy is playing an insane long game here, he is definitely not going to be our Ghostface killer. Personally, I think that Mark and Gail's fates are interchangeable. I think one of them is going to die and one of them is going to live, or honestly, they might just pull a Scream 5 here and kill both of them. I say this because Mark has about the same legacy status as Judy Hicks from Scream 4. Oddly enough, they are kind of the same character in a lot of ways. They're both red herrings in their own respective stories, they're both kind of love interests for different characters throughout the series, and they're both cops. I'm shocked these two didn't get together at a certain point. As we know from Scream 5, neither her or her son made it out of that film alive, well, at least with all the blood in their body. I still think Wes's death in Scream 5 is one of the most brutal kills in the entire franchise, right up there with Annika hitting that dumpster. 7 may do a repeat heartbreak like this just to clean house with the legacy characters. Whether you like Judy and Dewey's death in Scream 5 or not, we're all still talking about how big of a shock that was. I really wouldn't be surprised if they tried to recreate some of that magic in this one. Scream 7 needs to be a win, man. There's no word yet on if Agent Kirby Reed will appear in this flick, although I think she's gonna have a small cameo. It's been reported by Production Weekly that a Kirby-focused spin-off movie is in the works that may tell a story about a new Ghostface killing happening in a different part of the world. I imagine there's going to be some sort of setup for that here in a main timeline entry. And just like Kirby said in Scream 6, she takes a special interest in Ghostface killings. She was almost the victim of one herself. I really don't want Scream 7 to feel as crowded as Scream 6 did, so I kind of hope she's not like a main player the entire time. She kind of just like pokes her head in and is like, hey, you know, there's more Ghostfaces all around the world. Let me go take care of that, and like leaves. I have nothing against Hayden Panettiere. I think she's great in both Screams 4 and 6, but I think she just needs to set up her own movie and kind of like get out of Dodge. We already have plenty of characters for Scream 7. Talking about some of these new characters, we have Isabel May playing Sydney's daughter. Her name is allegedly Taylor in the flick, but take that with a grain of salt. The character names here come from a third-party source and have yet to be confirmed. Taylor is likely this film's Sam Carpenter, a character where Sydney can pass the torch on to and hopefully lead a whole new trilogy because money. I'm sure she'll have a few close calls with Ghostface, maybe even a chase scene or two, but ultimately I think she's gonna come out on top in the end. She's a survivor just like her mother. Asa German from Gen V is playing her boyfriend Brian. If this man is wearing a blue flannel at any point in this film, he is certainly our new Ghostface. When I first saw a picture of this guy after he got casted, I was like, dude, he's totally gonna be our new Ghostface. But it can't be the boyfriend again, right? Right? I'm cautiously going to call Brian a red herring as of right now and a dead character by the time the credits roll. I'd be a little annoyed if this character ended up being our Ghostface, considering that he's in the obvious role, but a big thing that trumps everything in this franchise for me is a good motive. I will take an interesting motive all day over familial revenge. I'm talking to you, Kevin Williamson. That is your go-to, Kevy Wills. Kill that darling. Next up is Celeste O'Connor playing Chelsea, the supposed heartbreaker of the group. This character is a wild card in my opinion. She could be an accomplice with that unsavory character description, but I doubt she's a lead Ghostface with an intricate motive. I've only ever seen this actress play side characters in some of her biggest credits, so it would be a shock admittedly to see her play a lead Ghostface. I wouldn't see it coming. If she's our lead antagonist like a Billy or a Richie, I'd be shocked. But realistically, I think she's going to be a big kill scene at some point in this flick. Next up is a character who can certainly only go one of two ways. Holly, played by McKenna Grace. Described as Taylor's rich friend, Holly is the queen bee of the group. McKenna Grace also holds the most star power of the entire fresh cast, meaning she's either our opening kill or lead Ghostface. Based on some of her previous movies, I think it's pretty obvious which role she's going to fill. I have never met McKenna Grace before, but she seems unbelievably sweet and super kind. Tell me she wouldn't make for a super upsetting opening kill. Early predictions for Scream 7 are mostly saying that this entry is going to play it safe because the franchise just hit a bunch of turbulence. So why not prove everybody wrong by killing off Phoebe Spangler killer in your opening scene. You should be afraid of this ghost, Holly. Last but not least is Logan, played by Sam Reckner. He's described as Taylor's creepy neighbor with a Ted Bundy vibe. Now I know what you're thinking. Jake, this one's way too obvious. No way could he be our next Ghostface. Well, I would disagree. Watch me be totally wrong, but hang on, wait, I got a point here. Billy Loomis was pretty obvious in the first Scream, but with purpose. The Loomis boy was a distraction, so you wouldn't be thinking about Stu or how their motive connects to Sidney's past. I think the same may be happening here. The twist, however, is I think Logan is only the accomplice to the main killer in question here, who we've yet to talk about. Our lead slasher in Scream 7, I think, will be this other rumored character who is yet to be cast yet, at least to my knowledge, Logan's mother, Jennifer. She's said to be one of Sidney's friends, and in my opinion, our lead killer in Scream 7. Think about this for a second. In Screams 5 and 6, which were both written by Guy Busick, who's also writing Scream 7, these films focus mostly on the relationship between Sam and Tara Carpenter, two sisters who kind of like fell out of touch and then put the family back together, sort of, in those last two films. Scream 7 will likely focus on the relationship between Sidney and her daughter Taylor. Now, just like in Scream 3, I think our killers here will be a dark reflection of that relationship. Roman is a dark reflection of Sidney, just like how Logan and his mom could be a dark reflection of that relationship I was just talking about. It would be super thematic and falls into the family connections that Kevin Williamson loves to make in nearly everything he's ever been involved with. If these rumored characters are true, I'm like pretty dead set on that duo being our big reveal in Act 3. It just makes way too much sense considering everyone who's involved on the creative team. I'm not exactly thrilled to be getting another family-oriented Scream film, but it is kind of a staple of the franchise at this point. They're likely going to do something along those lines. I think they still have a way to be unique, however. Just don't recycle the same motive from the past. I kind of don't care who the killers are at this point. I've accepted that it's always going to be something family-related, but just make the motive something fun and special, something the fans won't expect. I have to give some props to my buddy Critical Overlord, who's come up with my favorite motive theory so far. What if Jennifer is obsessed with Sidney in a way that none of the other killers from the past have been? Like more of a suburban mom kind of obsessed. Maybe she literally watches from that house next door that she lives in, seeing Sidney and Taylor have this great relationship on the outside that Jennifer just struggles with, considering that her murderous son Logan doesn't really care much for her. Maybe she keeps catching him killing animals in the backyard or something, and instead of putting a stopper on that behavior, does it with him. That's some lovely mother and son bonding we haven't seen since the likes of Nancy and Billy. I'm not opposed to that motive or that reveal, even though yes, it does sound a lot like Nancy Loomis and Billy Loomis. The difference here is seeing them interact with each other in the same story, opposed to the tacked-on feeling that Scream 2 has. With a darker, more modern tone, I think this could stand out in the same way that Richie and Amber make their story unique in Scream 5, because that's another pair of killers that you can also compare to the originals. Thankfully, their motive is very different, which again makes them stand out. It makes them actually part of the conversation of Ghostface as opposed to just a cheap copy.
You fuck with my family, you die. Listen up, ugly or Michael Myers. It was a summer fling, all right? It meant nothing.
Whoa, easy now, Chad. I thought you'd be in a better mood considering you're coming back for Scream 7, baby. I'm trying so hard not to lose my mind at 7 o'clock in the morning when I'm filming this right now, but oh my God. We have some of the most exciting Scream 7 news to talk about quite yet, and I have an insane theory that I think you guys are gonna love. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Now, as you guys know, I've been pretty lukewarm on the new entry in the Scream franchise. There's just been a lot of bad juju in the last couple of years, some nasty things going on behind the scenes to some beloved actors and actresses, and I'm just not really crazy about everything going on plot-wise with this movie so far. It feels like it's going to be another mix of a film kind of jumbled up doing a bunch of crazy things, so I don't have the highest hopes, but I think there is hope for a very fun Scream movie still to be at hand, just not like the best Scream film ever. Scream 7 has, however, been collecting a lot of positives just in the last couple of months or so, adding a bunch of really interesting new faces to the franchise, as well as bringing back Mason Gooding just last night, according to Variety. Now, this is 100% confirmed. It comes from a good source. This is so exciting. Not a lot of the stuff that actually gets talked about in the Scream news world is it actually confirmed, but this is a big beacon of hope in my opinion. And it's not just because Mason Gooding is the biggest sweetheart on planet Earth and I love him so much. There's a lot more to it than just that. We'll get into it in a minute though. First, I want to talk about this quote that Mason Gooding gave to Variety all the way back in March when we first got our biggest biggest element of a Scream 7 update. Talking about the turbulence that Scream 7 has hit behind the scenes, back in March, Gooding said, "If it could make money, I guarantee they're making it. It's all about keeping up with what feels like is the best movie for fans. Scream doesn't exist without the people who enjoy is as much as they do. If people want it, they will certainly try their best to see it happen." Now, I'm sorry I'm doing a lot of setup here, but that quote is going to ring true for a lot of the other things I'm going to say later on in this video when I get to the big point, but there's a lot of things we have to address before that. Another one of those things is Jasmine Savoy Brown, who plays his on-screen twin sister. Now, there was a recent update that came from specifically a fan who got to meet up with Jasmine Savoy Brown, even taking a picture with her and everything. This fella said that when he was talking to Jasmine, she said that she was not going to be involved with Scream 7, which admittedly would be a little weird considering that her brother, at least on-screen brother, literally just got confirmed to be in this new movie. So why would Chad be there without the core four? Well, I think this film is going to answer that in a very interesting way. Had I recorded this video last night, I would have been sold on the opening kill thing like everybody else, and it's still very much so a possibility, which is why we gotta talk about it. It makes a lot of sense to make Chad the opening kill of this new movie, considering his fate in the last two films. The guy was a pincushion in both Screams 5 and especially Scream 6. You guys have made that very clear that you guys did not like that he was stabbed a million times and still survived at the end of Scream, even though they did that to Dewey like 1,000 times in the other movies, but it's fine. I'm not gonna say that Chad is a better character than Dewey because that's simply not true. Dewey is fantastic. We love him so much. Bring back David Arquette if that's even possible. But like, dude, Chad is such a great character. I love him so much. He brings a similar vibe that Dewey brought to the table. He's a sweetheart and we love him. And anytime he gets stabbed, I get a little upset. But going back to the conversation that I literally talked about in my last Scream video, we were talking a little bit about how McKenna Grace just got cast in Scream 7 and how brutal that would be if she was the opening kill of this next film. Why I say that? She's Phoebe Spangler in the new Ghostbusters movies. She is so sweet, she's super kind. Killing her off in the opening would really set a brutal tone for this new Scream film, which I think Scream 7 needs to do in its opening. A lot of people think this is going to be a soft, flaccid Scream movie that doesn't take any chances, especially after all those production issues. They're just gonna play it safe, pump out another sequel, and everyone's gonna be kind of like, whatever with that one. It was another sequel, I guess, mid-tier. So listen, if they were to kill Mason Gooding in the opening scene to kind of separate the new from the old, it's, in a lot of ways, it's thematically relevant. It's kind of a commentary on itself, which Scream is kind of just doing that these days, opposed to commenting on other things going on in the world of horror. And I really don't think this would be a disservice to fans. If we can kill Dewey, and that's a big shock and surprise and truly a heartbreaking death in Scream 5, we can kill Chad here. A lot of people think I have it out for the legacy characters or something. No, nobody should be safe in a slasher movie, in my opinion. Not even Mason Gooding, and it kind of breaks my heart to even say that. I love him. I love him so much. I would buy him a milkshake, in fact, if I met him in real life. Mason, let's go get some milkshakes, buddy. Killing him off in the opening would be such an excellent tone setter. I don't think it would be mean-spirited as to say like, oh, Screams 5 and 6 sucked. Let's remove that from the past and move on. No, it would be killing the sweetest character from those last two films as a way to establish a very mean spirit for this new movie, which again, I think Scream 7 needs to do to really impress some fans. Now, I want to make this very clear. I am not against that. I love that theory so much. But I think that they might be utilizing Chad for something bigger here. I know I'm doing 2 Scream videos in a row here. I'm so sorry. This is not a Scream channel. I've made that so clear before. This is a horror page. We talk about all things horror, but there's just so much exciting Scream stuff to talk about right now. We got to get into it. Something else I talked about in my last Scream video, which was literally yesterday. I'm so sorry to the people who don't care about Scream. There is also a Kirby spin-off movie in the works. Now, I've been talking about the feel and tone of Scream 7. That's a big thing I've kind of been obsessed with in the last couple of weeks or so, or I guess months, maybe even a couple of years, talking about how this movie is going to feel a lot more akin to the original 90s trilogy. And I say 90s trilogy, but I'm roping in Scream 3 to that one. I don't care if it came out in 2000. It feels so 90s, man. I think that there's a big part of the fan base that really wants to see that with Scream 7, to go back to the original flavor. And I think this film will do that. But at the same time, I think they're going to set up this Kirby spin-off, which will be aimed a little more towards the younger audience that they've accumulated over the last couple of movies, like 4, 5, and 6. What's a great way to get your younger audience interested in that film? Set up a movie in this flick where you have Kirby, Chad, and maybe Tara all fighting ghost faces in a different part of the world, a totally separate story than what's going on in the main storyline. Now, this would be a good way to only utilize some characters from the core 4, opposed to the others that you can't necessarily get on board because of some really just bad behind the scenes Melissa Barrera ain't coming back as long as Spyglass has the rights. We all know this. But Chad is already back for Scream 7. Tara could also come back for maybe even this film and that Kirby spinoff. Hear me out here. Technically, the only reason why Jenna Ortega was not going to be in Scream 7 was due to scheduling conflicts because she had prioritized Wednesday's season 2, and that just wrapped filming 2 weeks ago. Remember, the reason why Jenna Ortega couldn't be in Scream 7 was because this film was initially supposed to film back in September. That's when they were supposed to start shooting. We would already be done talking about Scream 7 production stuff at this point, but now they're not going to start shooting until probably January of next year if things don't get delayed again. So I'm not necessarily saying Jenna Ortega is free right now. Maybe she's got something else going on in her schedule. She's a very busy A-lister, but maybe they have her be a big part of this Scream spinoff and they have her just have a little cameo in this flick alongside Kirby, which again, none of this is confirmed. This is all speculation at this time. The only thing that is confirmed that I'm talking about in this video is that Chad is coming back for Scream 7. I rewatched Scream 6 last night, and something I really picked up on, I was really honing in on Chad and everything they were doing with that character. Now, while I was really focusing on Chad, I also ended up thinking a lot about the character of Tara and a lot of the conversations that she has with some of our other characters. A big thing that stood out to me on this last rewatch was Tara and Kirby's conversation talking a little bit about how Kirby has dealt with the monsters of this world. Kirby talks about joining the FBI in order to just stop the ghost faces. That's why she's here in the first place. This doesn't even concern her, yet she's here stopping these ghost faces because she takes a special interest in that. Tara really, that really spoke to her. You can tell in that conversation. I think she even ends it by saying something like, oh, I liked that, you know, like she's like really invested in that idea. Maybe Tara goes down a similar route and is training at the FBI. Think of like a Silence of the Lambs situation where Kirby is kind of like her mentor as she's like training to go fight some ghost faces around the world. Something ridiculous like that, because that's where the franchise is now. Chad is her boyfriend, so of course Chad would be there as well, and that's why he could be confirmed for this new movie. Hell, you wouldn't even need Kirby or Tara to be in Scream 7 to set that up. All you would need is Chad just popping his head in for a second and saying, hey, we're gonna go fight ghost faces. Peace out. Maybe it's a post-credit scene, maybe it's just a little something in there. I mean, you guys gotta remember, Kirby was confirmed to be alive via a little tiny YouTube recommended video that Jack Quaid was watching in Scream 5. They could do something so tiny like that with Mason Gooding and set up a whole nother movie. And then you still might be asking yourself, Jake, why wouldn't the rest of the Core 4 be involved with that project though? But that's the thing that kind of works really well with Scream 6. The big plotline, the big focus of the story between the Carpenter sisters was that Sam had to let Tara go. That would explain why Sam is not in Tara's life anymore. She still is, but she's kind of like, just let her go. She's not smothering her, not being like 100% in her life all the time, just like, you know, extended family. And like I was saying earlier, Jasmine Savoy Brown is yet to be confirmed to be coming back to any Scream project except for that one thing from a fan, but who knows what's going on there? Nothing is confirmed at this time. It's all just a one big crazy theory that has me very excited for the future of Scream. On a final note, the reason that this news has me so excited is not just because I love Mason Gooding so much and I think he's an awesome actor who adds so much to every project that he's been involved with. I also just think Scream has so much more potential, and a project like this, a project that I'm describing here that is a little more out there than some previous entries, has me more excited than like any sort of callback to the past, because we've already done that, right? We've already told Sydney's story, and I'm excited to see her and her daughter run around chasing Ghostface, probably around a small town again. Has a feel like the original trilogy. That's gonna be cool. But to me, Scream 5 and 6 opened up the floodgates to do so much more with the character of Ghostface specifically. To me, Ghostface has always been limited. Ghostface has always been going after Sidney Prescott, and that's it. Now, Ghostface could be going after anybody in this universe because of those last two films. That opens up the possibility to so many different kinds of motives, so many different kinds of killers, so many different kinds of just anything you want behind that mask. If they roll with that idea, Scream can go on forever and evolve into something totally new and totally fresh, man. A project like this Kirby spinoff, I have a ton of faith in because it could turn the franchise into that. I know some people are just here for the legacy characters and the nostalgia back to the 90s, and if that's the case, this new film is totally going to make you happy, at least I think. But for those who want to see the franchise grow and continue onward into some crazy modern territory, I think this is the project that is going to absolutely knock our socks off. Again, this is just a theory, but God, I hope it becomes reality. One of my favorite elements to the Scream movies is trying to find that needle in the haystack. Who is Ghostface this time around, and why? Who is it? Don't walk away from me! Scream 7 begins filming on Tuesday, January 7th, which is tomorrow from the day that this video is being posted, and the casting director for Scream 7 may have just given us a little bit of information on how they're going to find this entry's Ghostface. Now let's get into the update. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. After multiple script rewrites and constant delays, Scream 7 finally begins filming this week in Atlanta, Georgia. The cast is arriving on set now, and your boy will keep you updated on anything we learn in the next couple of months or so through the production process. I'm not going to talk about any spoilers specifically though, just theories on set photos, and if I see something that really is spoilery, like we find out who the killer is, your boy ain't talking about it. Just a reminder, the point of this channel is not to spoil, but to build hype for upcoming horror films that I'm also excited for. Now, while I am super excited to do some update videos in the next couple of months or so on the production, today's update concerns the casting director for the previous few Scream movies. Rich D'Elia, who served as the casting director on Screams 5, 6, and now 7, recently had an interview with Russ Milham from The Direct. They got to talking about the meticulous casting process of the Scream franchise and how important the choice is for the next Ghostface. Diving deeper into this, D'Elia says, "I was lucky enough to work on the last two Scream films, so I've had a little experience with casting a few actors as Ghostface. And it's always different, depending on the story and the tone. Looking back on those previous two films, our Ghostfaces needed certain qualities to play those roles. For example, Detective Bailey needed to be played by someone who resembles Jack Quaid, considering that it was revealed in the third act that he was Richie's father. He's also played by Dermot Mulroney, who doesn't typically do horror movies, which fits with his anti-stab movie motive. Like, sure, he's the dad in Insidious 3, but his biggest credit is My Best Friend's Wedding. At least that's where most of you know him from, according to comments I was getting during the Scream 6 era of this channel. I think it's a really odd coincidence that in both Scream 6 and Insidious 3, he has a daughter named Quinn. What are the odds of that?" D'Elia continues, saying, "You know, I love Mikey Madison so much. She was obviously popping so big this year in Anora, and she's amazing. And she was someone who had really popped into my mind when we were doing, you know, one of the previous iterations of Scream. And then Jack Quaid is such a likable, personable guy that you knew that it was kind of a twist that you wouldn't necessarily see coming." This part of the quote makes me think that this casting director here is looking for someone who can not only pull off playing Ghostface, playing this sinister villain in the third act, but also someone who can hide in plain sight for most of the movie. Someone who seems good on the outside, but holds within them a dark, terrible secret. This works really well for both of our Ghostface actors in Scream 2022, who have played both heroes and villains in the past. I am particularly a fan of Mikey Madison in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where she dies in pretty much the same way as her Scream character in the 2022 film. Fire! Finally, D'Elia concludes with, "So depending on where they fit into the story, or looking at how I can either mess with audience expectations, present a red herring, or, you know, pick someone that you would never expect, Ghostface kind of fits into each iteration of Scream differently. And so you're just looking for however the casting can elevate or subvert the audience's expectations of who that might be." Now, while I absolutely love Rich's casting process here, I feel like the dude might have just showed his hand a bit for this upcoming installment. From this interview, I've gathered that Rich casts people he has a lot of faith in as actors, and who have experience playing different kinds of characters. Using Jack Quaid as an example, he plays one of our main protagonists on the show The Boys, Huey, and also the motherfucker that killed Rue in the Hunger Games. F that guy. Jack here can do both, just like Mikey Madison, who played an evil hippie cult member in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then also the titular Anora in the acclaimed 2024 film. Now, Scream 5 and Scream 7 share the commonality of both being reboots for this franchise. Many fans view this 7th entry as a return to form, considering that Sidney Prescott returns to be a main player, unlike the previous installment. Where Scream 6 tried to be punk rock and take down killers who don't even care for this franchise, Scream 7 seems to be going back to basics and will likely deliver a killer duo that is similar to Richie and Amber. The question now is, can we spot these two folks in the announced cast? I think we might be able to pinpoint at least one of them. So far, the newcomers of Scream 7 include Isabel May playing Sidney's daughter, Asa German, Celeste O'Connor, Sam Reckner, McKenna Grace, and Anna Camp. A lot of you have already been talking about this actress, but I think there is definitely one character here that holds all of those qualities we've been talking about this entire video. McKenna Grace is probably best known for her role as Phoebe Spangler in the last two Ghostbusters Ghostbusters films, but today I want to talk about two other roles she took up in the late 2010s. Gifted is a film about McKenna Grace playing young Mary Adler. She comes from a struggling family where Chris Evans serves as her only parental figure, yet she's incredibly gifted in mathematics. It's got a Good Will Hunting vibe, essentially. She's clearly the hero in that film, but she would play a dark reflection of this character just a year later in 2018's The Bad Seed. In that film, she is once again the daughter of a struggling father figure, yet she's undeniably the villain. The inciting incident of that film is her pushing her academic opponent off of a cliff, and the killings don't stop there. Both of these films have similar setups, yet McKenna Grace plays two entirely different characters with totally different motives. According to Rich D'Elia's interview comment here, this makes her perfect to play a Ghostface in the Scream universe. She's completely inconspicuous, yet can pull off both sides of the necessary components to a Scream killer. She can hide in plain sight as a seemingly nice friend, maybe to Sidney Prescott's daughter, yet once the third act strikes, she's the one holding the knife. If you weren't already sold on McKenna Grace being our Ghostface this time around from her star power alone, this pretty much seals the deal. Mark my words, she's gonna be the one taking off the Ghostface mask in Act 3 this time around. The updates for Scream 7 are about to get real crazy in the next couple of months, considering that production is just beginning now. I'm gonna be keeping a close eye on any production stills that come out of McKenna Grace, and I'll be trying to deduce who her accomplice is this time around.
I mean, when was the last time you saw a really scary movie?
I don't know, KW. Nosferatu had some pretty messed up moments just this past December. Today, however, we are talking all about Scream 7, which has just begun production yesterday. We have a new post from director Kevin Williamson to dive into, as well as a potential new cast member. Now let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I did the finger thing early there. Instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Scream 7 has officially begun production, and director Kevin Williamson took to Instagram to share with us a first look at that clapboard. Isn't it glorious? Haha! We also got to see what the first logo for the film looks like, even though that's subject to change. Remember when everyone thought that Scream 6 was going to be called Scream with 2 exclamation points? Obviously they weren't going to do that, and this will likely not be the same logo for Scream 7 when the film actually drops in theaters. In this particular situation though, I don't see that name changing. Where Scream 6 was a very punk rock entry that tried to stand out from the rest of the franchise, I think that this one is going back to basics, so we're gonna go back to just the regular numbers. Point being, I don't think that this entry is going to use Roman numerals. More importantly, it looks like they were shooting in the interior of a restaurant. It's reminiscent of that scene in Scream 2022 where our teenage characters are shooting pool at a dive bar for some reason. Who let those kids in there? We have no context on what was actually being shot on day one here, but it was something that obviously was later on into the film, as we could read right there on the clapboard, and many are speculating that it could be Sidney's bar that she owns. I never took Sidney as being incredibly business savvy, so I think she might be better suited for the kind of counseling work she was doing in Scream 3, but this movie might be a reinvention of the character, so I'm staying open-minded. I'm hoping to see a chase scene in here, maybe after hours, for one of our younger characters. Again, who keeps letting these damn kids in these damn bars? The update from Kevin Williamson, the creator and writer of the original Scream film, read, "I'm not supposed to post about Scream, and I hope Spyglass and Paramount will forgive me. But when you have one of the best days of your life, it's really hard to keep it to yourself. What an extraordinary day I had working with an amazing and talented cast and crew. They brought their A game and had my back every step of the way. I'm so very grateful for this opportunity and to Wes Craven, who was on my mind through it all. The profound impact he has had on my life and career is endless. What a day, I can't wait for tomorrow." The positive energy coming from Kevin here definitely has my hopes a little higher than they were a couple of months ago on this same project. Considering multiple rewrites and some tumultuous production problems for this film just in the last 2 years, I've been pretty worried about the quality of this one. Hearing that there's a positive vibe on set, however, gives me a lot more faith in this new entry. Godspeed, Kevy Wills. Godspeed. In the comments of Kevin's post, actress Chloe Madison stated, "See you on set," meaning she could be a secret new cast member. Chloe previously appeared in The Apprentice and an episode of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. On a little bit of a side tangent here, there's an episode of that Cabinet of Curiosities show directed by Panos Cosmatos, and any fan of Mandy needs to watch it. It stars Eric Andre, and there's a crazy practical effect monster in there. It is a must watch. The rest of the show is really good too, but that episode is a major standout stand out. This is total speculation here, and we don't even have confirmation that this actress is a part of the project yet. But if Chloe is attached to Scream 7 in some capacity, she bears a resemblance to actress Anna Camp, who has also been announced to be a part of the cast recently. Could Chloe be playing Anna's daughter, perhaps? Okay, mini theory over, back to the update. Speaking of the cast, there still hasn't been any sort of confirmation on Patrick Dempsey's return to the franchise. With this new story seemingly focusing on Sidney's family, you kinda need the father there to tell that story. Please don't write something in where he's just trapped in a meeting in London or something like that. If your family's getting attacked by Ghostface, you're likely gonna be there in a heartbeat. Rumor has it that there were further negotiations happening with Dempsey, meaning he's likely holding out for more money. That's totally fair considering all the taboo behind the scenes stuff we were talking about earlier. With production in full swing now, I'm sure we'll be getting some more updates soon and hopefully some new set photos. I can't wait to get a closer look at the next Ghostface mystery.
Sydney might know something.
Well, yeah, dude. Like, she's your wife, so why don't you just ask her?
She's a key element in this case.
Sheesh, Mark, you don't have to yell. Although Detective Kincaid here might not be thrilled about it, it seems as if he may be going up against Ghostface once again. This time the target is his family. On top of some juicy casting rumors, we also just got another look at where Scream 7 is currently filming. It's getting real exciting to be a Scream fan again, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's get into today's update. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. The Scream 7 news is heating up this week as production began on Tuesday. Director Kevin Williamson broke his NDA to share with us a first look picture from the set, and we might have just gotten a new cast member confirmed via Instagram. In case you missed it, check out my video from yesterday covering all of that fun stuff. Now we have even more updates to get into as Daniel Richtman has announced that Mark Kincaid, meaning Patrick Dempsey, has joined the Scream 7 cast. Now I hate to poop all over the parade, and I see a lot of Scream news pages falsely saying this, but technically this is not confirmed as of right now. I do want to note, however, that Daniel Richtman has been right about the majority of the Scream 7 casting updates we've gotten just in the last couple of months or so. This will likely get confirmed soon, but as of right now, Daniel Richtman is still a third-party source. Regardless, I was nearly 100% sure Patrick Dempsey would return to the franchise to play Mark again, after being confirmed to have a family with Sidney in Scream 2022. If we've learned anything from legacy sequels or the various unnecessary cameos of Deadpool and Wolverine, it's that legacy characters make money. How could Scream 7 possibly skip out on adding another one of those to the list? Especially a character who is actually crucial to the plot like Mark is here. It is his kids that are targeted by Ghostface this time around after all. The other thing that's interesting about Mark being confirmed to return here is that it keeps Screams 5 and 6 in the canon, although many fans want to erase those from existence. I personally love all of the Scream sequels, and I don't understand why so many folks are trying to justify that by saying you can't tell this story without retconning those movies. I mean, if we're gonna do the whole sequel erasure thing, you might as well just like cut out all the sequels and do a continuation from just the original. That way you have the freedom to tell any kind of story in this universe that you want. Thankfully, that doesn't seem to be the case with Scream 7. Especially considering Scream 6, there are a ton of jumping points from that movie alone that could push this franchise on forever. I would hate to see that get retconned from the timeline. Just like Dewey's evolution throughout the Scream sequels, I'd love to see Mark Kincaid as the sheriff of this potentially small suburban town outside of Atlanta that he and Sidney live in. Mark could serve as the sole police presence in this film as long as Agent Kirby Reed doesn't show up. But God, I hope she does. There are a ton of possibilities having both Mark and Kirby in the same scene together, two characters who have never met on screen before. Kirby might immediately distrust Mark after getting vulnerable with old Wayne Bailey in the previous installment. That resulted in her coming pretty close to death there again. If I was a character in this universe, I wouldn't trust anybody, man. On top of Mark's potential return, we just got some more photos of the restaurant Kevin Williamson and crew have been shooting at this week. Photo creds go to @bsimsky on Twitter, and thankfully the name of the place has been blurred out. I can't believe I even have to say this, but please don't harass the people on these sets making these movies. I heard that something like that happened during the production of Scream 6. Please don't be doing that. Anyways, the place is giving me Olive Garden vibes, so maybe Ghostface is looking for those unlimited soup, salad, and breadsticks. I'm embarrassed to admit how many of those baskets I've taken down in just one foul swoop. My body is a breadstick eating machine. Rumor has it that Mason Gooding and Celeste O'Connor were shooting a scene here together. A really weird coincidence there is in my video yesterday, I talked a little bit about how that first initial photo we got from Kevin Williamson reminded me a lot of that scene in Scream 2022 where our young characters were shooting pool at a bar for some reason, even though I'm pretty sure all of them were 17 to 18.
You want a real drink? Or you happy sitting at this kid's table?
It makes a little more sense here in Scream 7 for Chad and maybe even Celeste's character to be hanging out at a bar, because Chad is probably 21 at this point, right? Wait a minute. Is my dude on a date? What happened to Tara, dude? How you doing Jenna Ortega dirty like that? Speaking of his fictional on-screen relationship, Mason's involvement in this film is possibly my biggest question when it comes to Scream 7, especially if he's doing something more than being the opening kill. I mean, this could be the opening scene. Just because they're in public doesn't mean they're safe. You might remember the openings of Scream 2, 3, and 6 that all took place initially in public somewhere. Didn't really work out for any of those fellas, let me tell you. I just really hope the opening scene isn't about another girl home alone watching movies by herself and she gets a phone call. I'm not crazy about Scream 4's opening, but at least it tried to do something different with that same concept, but still, I think that's played out at this point. I hope that 7 swings for the fences with its opening scene, just like Scream 6. My other thought on this scene is it could be set up for the Kirby spin-off movie that was announced by Production Weekly just last year. Scream 7 is being shot in Atlanta, Georgia, which, if you remember from Scream 6, is where Kirby was initially based. Our new Ghostface, or Ghostfaces, could have ties to Jason and Greg from the opening scene of Scream 6, who are also from that city as well. So how does all of that involve Mason and Celeste, you might ask? Well, my theory is that after the events of Scream 6, Tara and Chad might have moved down to Atlanta, possibly to be closer to Kirby. There's this little conversation in Scream 6 where Tara and Kirby discuss why she joined the FBI. To paraphrase a little bit, Kirby says it empowers her and makes her feel like the thing that monsters are afraid of. That really seemed to speak to Tara in that sequence.
I wanted the monsters to be afraid of me. I like that.
Now, while Jenna Ortega will likely not appear in this upcoming entry, her boyfriend Chad is already confirmed. Maybe he's hanging out at this bar in Atlanta to set up a spin-off movie in the future with some more characters from Scream 6. That way, the Legacy fans are happy with the 7th installment that puts the focus maybe back on Sidney Prescott, likely her daughter though, and then whatever this Kirby spin-off movie is ends up being some sort of extension of Scream 6. Personally, I'm looking forward to both projects. It scratches both of the itches I have with the Scream universe. Fingers crossed they're both of quality. If this scene that they're filming on week 1 is a chase sequence like many are speculating, I hope we get a nasty restaurant kitchen death similar to the likes of that one scene in Thanksgiving where the waitress gets her face and fingertips frozen to the walk-in freezer door. That was nasty. There's 1,000 ways to die in a kitchen, man. Could you see Ghostface drowning someone in some nasty dishwater, or maybe burning their face off with a hot frying pan? Let's be real though, it's probably going to be a typical stabby, as that's Ghostface's MO. But oh boy, do environmental kills have my whole heart. I'm really hoping to see some more of those here in Scream 7. For now, most of this is speculation until we get the film on February 27th of 2026. That's only a year and a month away until we get to see the next Ghostface mystery. Your boy will keep you updated on the news until then.
You see this, Stewie? I haven't had one of these in a year and a half. Someone's gonna pay for this.
After seeing some of the leaks for Scream 7 this weekend, I might need one of those too. And a big man like Patrick Warburton to hold me in his strong arms. We're digging a bit too deep into the 7th installment of Scream Online, and I feel like we're hearing about things that we definitely shouldn't know until the movie releases. Without further ado, let's get into today's rant. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. I love talking about Scream on this page, as a lot of you might know. It's one of my favorite franchises to discuss due to the infinite possibilities of Ghostface reveals, motives, shocks, and surprises. Whenever Scream news comes out, it just gets the cogs in my brain working to come up with some kind of crazy theory that I like to share with all of you. Sometimes it does frustrate me a little bit to see an early review go out for a highly anticipated new movie from this month get half the views of one of my theories, but the viewers want what the viewers want. I'm always game to talk some Scream 7 updates, even some leaks that don't spoil anything super important. Last week, for instance, we were able to deduce that Scream 7 was being shot at some sort of bar or restaurant based on the initial post from director Kevin Williamson, and some shots from Atlanta locals. There's no harm in talking about these things unless you're someone highly anticipating seeing Ghostface eat pasta for the first time and ordering a Manhattan kicked in the side with a shot of vermouth. In that case, I apologize for the unprompted spoilers. Now there's some stuff coming out about this upcoming installment that has me scratching my head wondering why any fan would want to know this before the film comes out. Admittedly, today's update comes from a third-party source, Daniel Richtman, but this is the guy who was also reporting on cast members for Scream 7 before they were confirmed. He ended up being right about a lot of them too, like McKenna Grace and Asa German. So now, if what he's reporting is true, it's something I simply did not want to know about this film before I got into it. Before we go any further, I want to give a massive potential spoiler warning. This is something that may or may not actually be happening here in Scream 7. Considering that a lot of other Scream accounts have already talked about this though, most of you probably know what I'm about to get into anyways. I am, however, going to give some fans the luxury of clicking away before I get into it. You have 5 seconds. Delicious. Now let's talk about it. Daniel Richtman reports that there will once again be more than 2 ghost faces in this entry of Scream, just like in the 6th installment. Just to conclude this section of the video before we analyze that a little bit, I hold no animosity in my heart towards people who are talking about this. If you're excited for Scream and you're posting that out there, I get it. I get the excitement, man. I was ready to talk about this when I saw it too. That's really exciting and something to dive into here, especially considering that it's coming from director Kevin Williamson, who has played with ideas like this before in the past. And trust me, we're going to get to this. I also do really appreciate a lot of the Twitter accounts who are putting like spoiler warning before like they post about it. There is a little bit of effort being put in there to not spoil this for everyone, and that I appreciate. But still, there's a lot coming out about this movie that I don't want to know. Point being, watch out for big spoilers coming in the future here. I'm sure more are coming, considering that we already know how many killers there are going to be in Scream 7, allegedly. Now, if you are still watching and you haven't clicked away at this point, I might as well analyze this at this point since I've kind of had it spoiled maybe for me. Maybe a hot take, but I guess I don't mind more than 2 killers coming from specifically Kevin Williamson. If it was anyone else, like if Christopher Landon was still directing, I might be hanging my head in shame. The biggest reason for this is it kind of reminds me of the lackluster reveal of Scream 6, easily one of the weakest in the entire franchise. Most folks were upset that the motive was a little too similar to Mrs. Loomis from Scream 2, which, trust me, I understand, I concur. The biggest thing that was disappointing to me about it is that it was way too obvious who it was. When they didn't show Quinn getting killed in that one sequence, the first thing that went into my brain was they're pulling a Roman on us. And then in the next scene, Detective Bailey says this:
You fuck with my family, you die.
So now that it's obvious that he's Ghostface and his daughter didn't die on screen, pretty sure you can deduce at least 2 of the killers from that one sequence, man. I can't even believe I'm saying this, but Ethan was the most mysterious Ghostface of Scream 6, and even then he was pretty sus. It's a shame that the mystery doesn't work in Scream 6 for me because I think everything else is damn near perfect. Had they spent like another couple of weeks polishing up that script, I think it easily is the best sequel. I really didn't like the 3 Ghostfaces being utilized in Scream 6 because it wasn't necessary. You could have done that story with just a dad and a daughter. Ethan could have just been a really good red herring, man. The reason I'm into more than 2 Ghostfaces with Kevin Williamson directing is maybe this could be a reimagining of his original Scream 3 idea. During a 2013 interview with Entertainment Tonight discussing his new series at the time, The Following, Kevin Williamson made it known that the series was based on his original script for Scream 3. Kevin didn't write the 3rd entry of Scream for a number of reasons. One, he was busy with his directorial debut teaching Miss Tingle. Scream 7 will be his 2nd directorial feature, interestingly enough. And the studio wanted to tone down the violence for the 3rd entry after recent shootings had been blamed on the 2 existing Scream films. Kevin Williamson's original idea for Scream 3 was virtually tossed aside and Aaron Kruger just kind of took over from there. That's why it's the silliest entry. Kevin's original plan was to essentially feature a cult of ghost faces. An entire Stab fan club at Woodsboro High would be the big reveal at the end of the film. Now, I've never read these notes, although I really want to, but if I had to guess, the big reason why it was rejected is probably because it was a counter commentary to what had happened in real life. It probably would have delved deeper into the whole does violence in movies affect real life debate that the earlier entries of Scream get into a lot. Billy, Mickey, and even John Milton are the biggest perpetrators of this commentary element. I guess you could technically argue that all of the Scream motives have something to do with violence in movies affecting real life, but there's something about those first 2 movies especially that just hit that anger right on the head of the nail. It was the late 90s, man. It was a really angry time. Considering that Kevin Williamson developed his initial idea into the TV series The Following and would use the Stab fan club bit for a crucial element to Scream 4, I don't think we'll see this exact idea play out in entry number 7. However, we have yet to see Kevin tackle the idea of a cult of ghost faces in his Scream movies, which would certainly make this one different. Now listen, I read a lot of comments about people who want to see certain things from the Scream universe. Some folks want it to be 2 killers again. Some folks just want to go back to normal, go back to how those original 3 movies movies felt. I really think that people are going to be disappointed in this entry if that's the mindset you're currently in. I think with Kevin Williamson directing, a lot of people feel like it's going to go back to the feel and flow of the first 3 movies, but the state of horror is just incredibly different than it was back in the late 90s. You gotta think, in the late 90s, people were exhausted by slashers. They had seen them for like 20 years at this point. They're like, we're done. We're done with slashers, move on to something else. We love Scream because it's making fun of that. We're so familiar with the tropes, it doesn't scare us anymore. That's why, in my opinion, the first 3 Scream movies, they don't necessarily scare me. They're more focused on the commentary of just like kind of poking and prodding at all the slasher movies we've come to be super familiar with, maybe even a little too familiar with. That's why that first movie especially was this cultural revolution. But then, of course, just like all trends in horror, it died, Saw became super popular, and people were like, hey, blood and guts, that's pretty cool. And oddly enough, that is a similar thing that's happening right now in the world of horror, with Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3 really popularizing over-the-top, brutal, bloody kills. Scream 7 is likely going to feel a lot closer to Screams 5 and 6 in my opinion, even though a lot of people don't want to hear that. If a lot of the rumors we're talking about today end up being true, I could totally see Kevin Williamson trying out the whole cult of Ghostface thing, but maybe through a modern lens. Kevin Williamson didn't come up with the idea of doing a cult of Ghostface back for Scream 3 for no reason. I mean, there was a point to that. I personally could see it being a response to some of those awful real-life things that really did happen. Maybe Kevin, alongside writer Guy Busick, has updated the idea of the cult of Ghostface, made it something a little more modern. These movies have always had a bout of social commentary in them. I would not be surprised if we went down that route. I am really hoping that Scream 7 does not get spoiled before it releases on February 27th of 2026, but that is a little over a year away, so the likelihood of it not getting spoiled is It seems like with each new Scream film, more and more spoilers come out for the films before they even release, which really has me bummed out, I'll tell you what. Let's hope a clip of the killers getting revealed doesn't leak online like it did with the last film. I am still so thankful I didn't have Scream 6 spoiled for me. Today we have some more Scream 7 news that is simply making me question reality. Are we living in the Matrix? Is this all just a terrible simulation? Where are Morpheus and Neo?
Morpheus is fighting Neo.
Okay, well, at least one of my melodramatic questions has gotten an answer. Let's get into the update. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Not to be too blunt about it, but Scream 7 has made the peculiar choice to retcon a vital Easter egg from a previous film, with today's strange casting news. Joel McHale has been announced as part of the cast and is currently shooting with the Mystery Gang down in Atlanta. Deadline confirms that he's playing Sydney's husband, Mark Evans, in the upcoming film. Now, this doesn't work for me for a number of reasons. Starting off with the obvious one, he is very clearly replacing Mark KINCAID. During a throwaway line in the 2022 requel film, Sidney Prescott states that her husband's name is Mark. Tyler and Matt from Radio Silence would even go on to confirm this during an interview after the film's release, with Matt literally saying verbatim, Mark KINCAID is Sid's husband. Now, if you've been watching these videos for some time, you guys know how I feel about legacy characters in requel films or just any sort of continuations in general. Here in Scream, however, sometimes I feel like they're just adding more legacy characters to the mix for fan service, sacrificing a good mystery. The majority of the legacy characters in Scream would just never go Ghostface based on things we know about them from previous entries. Maybe Cotton Weary in Scream 2 and Scream 3, but of course he was the opening kill in LA. Mark KINCAID admittedly isn't the strongest character in the entire franchise, but I just feel like Patrick Dempsey is a better fit to play Sid's husband after everything that's been set up with the character. Mark tried to protect her in the third act of Scream 3 before Roman beat the crap out of him multiple times, and of course, he's the sexiest man alive. I mean, that's true love right there. I hate getting my panties in a bunch here over a romance in a slasher movie. Trust me, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I guess the thing I'm the most concerned with now is Sidney Prescott's portrayal in this upcoming film. After everything that has happened to Sid, 5 different Ghostface attacks at various points in her life, I just don't see her getting vulnerable with somebody who wasn't involved with that in some capacity. Creating a new character like Mark Evans here is an immediate misstep in my opinion. It reminds me a lot of Laurie Strode's poor portrayal in Halloween Ends. After losing her daughter to the hands of Michael Myers, who she spent a lifetime trying to protect, it was only after a meager couple of years that Laurie would seamlessly get over it. She's even celebrating Halloween in that last entry there. Sorry, but no. That's like if Ellen Ripley came to the conclusion in Aliens, you know, Wayland Weyland-Yutani isn't that bad, I guess. I can maybe help them transport some xenomorphs across the galaxy, like she would never do that. I just don't see this working for Sidney Prescott, especially if Joel McHale ends up being our Ghostface. For me, it just makes way more sense for someone like Mark Kincaid to be her partner, considering the role he played in one of her most defining battles. Okay, that's enough of the romance talk. I feel all sticky and sappy. Ugh, I don't like it. Let's get back to the horror. Now, unlike some of the folks I talked to last night on stream, I don't necessarily hate Joel McHale. I think he's a hilarious comedian, but some actors just don't fit certain projects. For instance, McHale is probably best known for his role on the uniquely funny television show Community. Joel leads the cast playing womanizer Jeff Winger alongside many similar roles in other properties. Now, you're trying to tell me that the guy who is known for his douchey, narcissistic characters is supposed to be Sidney Prescott's happy ending or the new Ghostface, who has been married to her for some time now and has had multiple kids with her? Cause it's either one or the other. I love Joel McHale when he's doing his typical shtick, but this is just not good casting. Either he's a super out of place good character or a very obvious Ghostface. Neither make for memorable characters in the Scream universe. Now, although this is yet another poor decision from a film franchise that has made a few of those in the last couple of years, I think I understand why this was ultimately done. Director of Scream 7, Kevin Williamson, is known for creating this franchise, penning the script for the original slasher hit and 2 of its sequels. He was absent from the production of the 3rd film after the studio demanded that the majority of the violence be cut from that specific film. After the Columbine shootings, many angered parents blamed properties like Scream that were directed towards a younger audience that depicted violent acts. Kevin's notes for the original Scream 3 story followed a group of stab fan films at Woodsboro High School, all ending up being a cult of Ghostface kids going after Sidney Prescott. To me, it sounds like it could have been a vehicle for some sort of counter-criticism towards everything that was being thrown his way at the time. The studio tossed it, so screenwriter Aaron Kruger took over. That's why the film has a much sillier tone and a lot of goofier happenings throughout its plot. For example, a house filling up with gas and blowing up without any of the characters smelling the insane amount of gas that it would take to make that kind of explosion. Obviously, Kevin Williamson is not a huge fan of that entry. Who would be in his situation? But it seems like he does have a good attitude about it.
I wasn't watching, I wasn't just coming to it like a moviegoer. I was coming to someone who didn't write it, who should have.
If you see it from Kevin's perspective, I can understand why he wouldn't want to use a movie invention like Mark Kincaid from a film that he didn't even have anything to do with. Scream 7 is his big creative return to the franchise, although I'm sure he had a little bit of a hand in Screams 5 and 6. I think he's trying to make 7 his own movie, and why would you want to include something from Scream 3 in that case? It's been confirmed from EW as well that Patrick Dempsey will not return for Scream 7. But at least now we can look at Sidney's husband and say to ourselves, maybe he's Ghostface, because like I was saying earlier, it's just not going to be a legacy character outside of crazy fan theories. You know, something that I would come up with. If there's any silver lining to this unfortunate decision, it has to be that. I'll tell you what though, Mark Evans sounds like a made-up name or a sports newscaster and like nothing in between. Mark Evans here announcing the big game today, Super Bowl 57, or whatever Super Bowl they're on at this point. That's enough complaining, however, because we do have some good news to talk about from yesterday. Alongside her twin brother Chad, Mindy Meeks Martin will return to systematically dump movie commentary into the dialogue of Scream 7. Listen, call her annoying all you want, but I'm just happy that some remnants of the last 2 films will be found here in the 7th installment. I wish we could get the entire core 4 back, but I just don't think that's possible. Hopefully Mindy and Chad will be more than just the opening scene of this horror movie, even though some sequel erasure is already happening before our eyes. I wouldn't be too shocked to see those characters go that early on. Now, even though I'm not loving what I'm hearing about Scream 7 right now, I'm still hoping for a quality product. Even though Scream 3 had various production problems, pretty close to what's happening with Scream 7 now, they were still able to turn a film that was literally being rewritten as the story went along into something that isn't the most unwatchable movie I've ever seen. Sure, it's goofy and illogical at points, but the punk rock commentary directed towards the Weinsteins can't be left out of a review. That's pretty damn sharp and aged like fine wine. Kind of, depending on how you look at it, I guess. I also love that they embraced the more comedic tone that they were boxed into, with Parker Posey's Jennifer Jolie especially. I like that character so much, I don't even think I would mind if she came back from the dead. If there's any hopeful note to end this video on, it's that even at its worst, Scream still finds a way to be entertaining. I think that's why there are so many many diehard fans of this series. Scream simply won't quit even when all the odds are stacked against it. This isn't the first time that the Scream franchise has been in some hot water, and it probably won't be the last. I still have faith in Scream 7, and I think it's going to be a fun watch on February 27th of 2026.